Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming today. Thank you, Ogihara-sensei, for your introduction. So, I will be talking about learning through mutual mentoring. I'll go through some important topics that we consider that are important mainly for teachers to become aware of. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the teacher-student relationship and how this is very central to academic performance. Now, this kind of relationship is very symmetrical. What that means is the teacher and students have somehow should have mutual understanding with each other, and their emotions can affect each other because there is a relationship between them. And if a teacher is happy, usually the students become happier, and vice versa. If the student is not happy, it could cause problems for the teacher. So this is something central to academic life and for the happiness and well-being of both teachers and students. Now, the traditional method of motivation in academia has always been based on the carrot and stick model. Now, this model is basically you reward or punish in order to get results. So at some stage, students either get punished by getting bad grades, or they get rewarded by getting good grades if they do perform well. And basically the main motivation of students in this context is that they are derived by this kind of carrot and stick model. Now, this, I believe, has become too old-fashioned, and we need to look at new ways to motivate students in order to promote better health and well-being and intrinsic motivation. So we will talk about that in the next couple of slides. So we have to abolish this system as much as possible. So firstly, I'd like to talk about the expectation theory of motivation, or the Pygmalion effect. Now, what this is basically, there was an experiment where scientists were given a group of identical mice. They all have the same intelligence, but they were told that one group is more intelligent than the other group. And what basically happens, these scientists were in charge of basically trying to make these mice complete a maze. And because they believe that these two groups have different intelligence, they treated the ones which are intelligent differently to the group which didn't, where they believed were not intelligent. And so this labeling of the smart and dumb group changed the expectation of the teacher of each of these individual groups. And in this experiment, the rats which were expected to perform better, in other words, the intelligent rats, were able to complete the maze much more effectively than the rats which were the group of rats which were labeled dumb. And this is very interesting because all the rats had this equal intelligence in this experiment, but because of the scientists' expectations, or perhaps which affected their behavior towards these rats, the way they learned to perform this task varied across the two groups. So these rats performed well, whereas these rats didn't perform well. The rats which were believed to be intelligent performed much better. Another important thing that needs to be considered in students is their freedom of expression and creativity, which is really not considered very much in today's academic system. Students come to university to learn about what they're good at, their own skills, and what they want to do in life. And the problem with the current education system is that we focus too much on molding students into the way we want them to be, rather than the way they want to be. And not really considering individual skills of students. In this picture, we have a creative organization where everybody does something different. And as a result, we have some interesting things, outputs coming out of this. The other organization, everybody is on creative organization, so everybody is basically doing the same thing and producing just the same output. So what I'd like to emphasize here is that it's important to look at the creativity of students and inspire them to be more creative, rather than just give them all facts and figures and kill their creativity. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is the concept of autonomy. Now, what is autonomy? Autonomy specifically refers to being in control of one's own life. Providing autonomy means teachers allowing students to develop their own values, ideas, and courses of action while providing them with support, guidelines, and mentoring. And this, everyone requires different levels of autonomy. So some students need more support, more guidelines. Some need to explore their own ideas. And this basically requires teachers to look at exactly what the student needs and support them accordingly. And basically what this does is allows the students to develop intrinsic value or intrinsic interest in what they're doing. And this will give them a better way of being self-motivated rather than being pushed to do what the teachers want them to do. And in this context, communication is very important, and understanding, respecting individual student needs for them to grow and perform optimally. So here are some questions regarding autonomy in students. Now, autonomy in students, depending on country and culture, backgrounds, already exists, probably high in Anglo-American and European cultures and low in Asian countries, especially in the educational context. Now, the answer is yes. Although autonomy is inherent in all of us, culture and country does affect the level of autonomy students are given. And cultural autonomy support is more apparent in Western cultures and less apparent in Asian cultures. So in Asian countries, students are more prone to be exposed to controlling methods rather than autonomy supportive methods. The students' autonomy, whether high or low, affects teachers' attitude towards students. The answer is students' autonomy can affect teachers' attitude towards students in positive and negative ways. In general, the most effective teacher should be one that supports autonomy by allowing the students to explore their ideas and engaging in mentoring and guiding rather than controlling and dictating behavior, which is opposite of autonomy supportive attitude. So we'll look at more about what autonomy supportive behavior involves. So at the moment, I'd like to go to the next question. Autonomy can be nurtured by effective supervision and education. The answer is autonomy support is an approach to teaching and supervision which supports students' internal drive and interest in what they have chosen to do. It is more about guiding rather than dictating. So it's about allowing the students to develop their intrinsic motivation and want to rather than have to. So this is a kind of a new approach which is opposite of the carrot stick model that we are so used to. So referring back to the previous question, if yes, how? So communicating and acknowledging students' ideas, reducing controlling of students, trusting in their intelligence, positive feedback, less criticism, and more praising are some ways to support autonomy in an educational setting. Okay. So well-nurtured autonomy means international motivation. Okay, this question, if you mean whether an autonomy supportive educational institution attracts more students, then the answer depends on experience of current students, of course. And how this is advertised to outsiders. Generally, it may take time to reap the rewards of autonomy supportive teaching in terms of seeing the increased academic performance and higher student satisfaction. So when we change to this new approach of autonomy supportive teaching, this takes some time for students to adjust to this new kind of system. And to see the benefits of this may take some time. So if yes, what are the consequences coming from well-nurtured autonomy? And the answer is high academic performance and higher student satisfaction and well-being. Students will generally become happier and more productive as a result. And that will also affect on the teachers. So teachers will be more satisfied with their students. And so as we talked earlier, as I mentioned earlier, this is a symmetrical model. So, and when the teachers are feeling better, then the students feel better, and so on. So an autonomous student is an autonomous student says, I like to, I want to, I enjoy, I aspire to, rather than I have to, I must. So the attitude is very different. As you can see, this cartoon demonstrates. On the left-hand side, we have a student which is basically subjected to deadlines and things which basically are extrinsic motivators. So they tend to be more stressed about their studies. On the right-hand side is a student who has intrinsic motivation. So they like to do their studies. So they're inspired to do their studies. And they are happier and they perform better. So what is autonomy supportive teaching behavior? So these are some of the traits of autonomy supportive teaching. Listening to students more. Spending less time holding instructional materials such as notes and books. So a lot of times we spend a lot of time with notes and books and writing from books and less time actually communicating with students. So spending less time doing that also will increase autonomy supportive behavior. Giving students time for independent work. That promotes students' confidence in their intelligence. Giving fewer answers to the problems students face. Likewise, if teachers always give direct answers to every question students give, then the student feels they're too dependent and also not competitive enough. They feel that they always need somebody to tell them what the right answer is. So that also is not good. Rather than giving direct answers, guiding students or giving them hints is much more effective so that they can trust in their own intelligence. Avoiding directives, praising mastery. So praising, basically this is opposite of criticism. So if a student does something correct, you praise it, and spend more time praising rather than criticizing students. That also increases autonomy support behavior. Giving answers less often, responding to student-generated questions, encouraging asking questions from students. This will basically make the students also more involved in their own studies, more responsible for their studies. Communicating statements rich in empathy and perspective thinking. Support intrinsic motivation, so their own intrinsic interest in their subject. That's very important. Supporting internalization. That's more about understanding the students, understanding that what they're learning, what they're doing is a part of their life. It's a part of the core values that they have. Coming across as less demanding and less pressuring, so imposing less deadlines and pressures on the student. So basically this gives students some more room to expand and be more autonomous as a result. So basic findings of autonomy supportive teachers versus controlling teachers. So autonomy supportive teachers are very responsive. They spend time listening, as I mentioned earlier. They're supportive. They praise quality of performance. So they spend a lot of time praising students. They're flexible. So for instance, they give students time to work in their own way. Then students are less subjected to very direct instructions. And motivate through interest. So they emphasize more on inspiring students and creating intrinsic motivation. Controlling teachers, however, take charge, hold instructional materials, use directives and commands, shape students towards a right answer. So they always are directing, commanding, telling the students what the right answer is and what is the wrong answer. And they often criticize a lot also. They spend a lot less time praising, so that's another trait of controlling teachers. And motivate through pressure, deadlines, assignments, and seem demanding and controlling. So these are basically the two differences between autonomy supportive teachers and controlling teachers. So it's clear to see which one causes more stress to students and which one gives them a better way of doing what they already have to do, but in a more effective way. So how does teachers' behavior affect the students? It's fairly clear that if the student feels they have low autonomy, their competency level decreases, and they basically feel more stressed. So that's a result of that. And higher autonomy will basically provide higher well-being and happiness for students, and also high performance. So then if that's the case, if autonomy supportive teaching is so effective, why do some teachers still want to control? Well, one clear reason is because we're just used to that kind of system for hundreds of years. And it's still popularity of behavior modification, which is still quite popular in teacher training programs. And there's relative absence in these same teacher training programs of how to design instruction to promote students' autonomy. So the importance of autonomy support is something which is new research in the fields of educational psychology. And it's still not established as well as it needs to be. So it will take some time for this. And new research shows that definitely autonomy supportive teaching is a lot more effective than controlling behavior. And teachers are themselves subjected to controlling, pressuring conditions within their job. So that's understandable. Sometimes teachers are also under a lot of controlling situations. As you know, it's very hierarchical. So if you're being pressured, you pressure those below you. And this is generally a natural byproduct. And the more disengaged students are, the more they pull controlling behaviors out of the teacher. So if the students are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're not studying, they're not doing their assignments, they're not writing their papers, then the teacher feels that they have to push, they have to force and impose more controlling behavior, which again has counter effect. It has a negative effect. So teachers sometimes underestimate students' abilities to motivate themselves. And that's a very important one, because students generally select their subjects, their courses, based on their own interest. So then why can't they motivate themselves? Why do they need somebody else to motivate them? Rather, they need a guide, someone who can guide them or mentor them, inspire them, rather than control them. And some teachers view motivation as a fixed trait in students. Accordingly, when motivation is low, controlling motivational strategies are used to overcome the perceived deficit. So again, basically goes back to the previous point, where if the teacher feels the student has low motivation, then they will try to motivate them using extrinsic motivational factors. Again, reducing the autonomy of the students. So these are some of the reasons why still teachers believe that controlling behavior is effective. So this is a sort of a graph showing how the student performance, at the same time also, the student well-being is very similar to this. Now, again, students are different, so they need different levels of autonomy support and different amounts of guidance. So, but in general, the best amount of help happens in the center. So where we have autonomy, competency, and relatedness. Now what these three are, Tanaka-sensei will talk a bit more about that. Basically, the student performs best there where they have autonomy, and they feel competent, they trust their own intelligence, they feel that they can perform, they don't feel sort of looked down upon, they don't feel that they have lack of competency. And relatedness basically is related to the relationship and how well they feel that they're connected with the community they're in, with the classroom, with their teachers, how close they feel, and the relationship. So the effective motivation zone, basically the teachers look at guiding, mentoring, listening, inspiring, exciting, showing purpose for the students, why they're doing what they're doing, how values concentrate on showing interest, promote internalization. So, and here basically when there's not much interest shown in the student or their subjects, so they're bored and uninterested in the student and his own topic, and it just basically a lot of controlling behavior there. And on the other end, we have excessive controlling, where we have too much criticism, evaluating, controlling, again lowering the performance. So, in conclusion, the teacher-student relationship is central to effective academic success, both at the graduate and undergraduate level, I believe. So if it's, whether it's supervision of students, or whether it's teaching and lecturing, autonomy support is very important, relationship is very important, and it will affect academic performance. And effective teaching and supervision is not so difficult, actually. It's a new approach. It's just a new way of looking at things, new way of doing things. And to a lot of us, it's still a foreign kind of approach. That's why we don't take it into account. But eventually, I think this is a very effective way to promote better education to students. Okay, so thank you for listening.
どうもありがとうございました。S さん、坂江さん。次はじゃあ田中サポートオフィスの田中先生にカウンセリングっていう立場で今のそのオートノミーっていうアイデアが S さんから提示されましたけども、まあそれとつながった形でお話しいただけると思います。よろしくお願いします。